Lost Journey. We're out rested. We're going to go shopping. I have a coupon that expires today for $20 off. And I'm like, $20 off is like $20 free money. Oh, yeah, it is to me, right? So a lot of times the problem that happens when, you have to buy things, based off of a sale or an expiration date, you have to figure out ways, to preserve the resources, okay? So even though I wasn't ready, to go to the store, because I'm not eating a variety of food right now. I am eating, but I'm not eating a variety. So this is going to open up the idea of maybe bringing in a variety to my diet, okay? And that's why I don't have a list. I don't have a list, but I do have a budget. Okay? I do have my preferences, and I still have a budget. Okay. So, today's the last day of the month of June. Yay! But shit, it's been hot as hell, right? Getting back to, talking about the family, right? Anecdotal alert, right? When I was growing up, a lot of men were kind of abusive to their sons. And he was demarking that, men don't do this and men don't do that. Don't coddle him, you're gonna turn him into a sissy. Stuff like that was commonplace in the household, right? And yet, this behavior was, I guess, something that the man had learned outside of the house, right? That outside of the house, you had to be stern, you had to be stoic, you had to be forceful, intimidating, keep your enemies close so that you can see their pulse before they, in case they want to strike. Okay, all right. Okay, where you can see that eye twitch up close, stuff like that, right? Now, women on the other hand, they want to come in peace, right? They want a peaceful environment. Normally they don't even want to fight. They will acquiesce, just to maintain the peace. Not all women, but most women in general. And the reason why is because women have that understanding that because life comes through her, she has more of the wiring required to preserve life. Not so much for men, okay? And a lot of men, they want to have that same ability to preserve and, and to utilize resources, efficiently, until they don't. Right? Until, they start feeling like, why? Okay? And, so men, they get caught off guard a lot of times because men know, keeping another man, in proximity of their personal space, they have to be on guard. They have to be on guard. They learned this as a child, right? Where men were bullying each other. Women, girls usually didn't, right? Because they already accepted the fact that, they were weak. Now, we did have the tomboy girls who, they were like, they can do whatever a guy can do too, right? No problem, right? Because most of the time when they acted that way, they did that while in the presence of other guys, okay? Now, the dynamic kind of shifts when that same tomboy, gets into an environment of mostly women, right? Because at some point the men are gonna kick her out. Usually after some vicious attack upon her, yeah, she gonna run away, right? She gonna run away, and that's when her eyes open up that she thought it was about spiritual power. She thought it was about influence. She thought it was about making money, until she starts seeing up close that men are driven by their lower extremities, okay? And sometimes she can't believe that, the tomboy girl, she can't believe that, and unbeknownst to her, the time comes where they prove to her how wrong she was. All right? Usually, she gets a train pulled on her, or, and, they make her the scapegoat, right? They scapegoat her, right? They turn her into a mule. Oh, look at those lamps. I can't even afford those lamps. Who knows? I might check it out on my way back. So then, once she's been traumatized enough, she, tries to wiggle her way back into, the feminine environment, right? And she's wiggling her way back into the feminine environment, and she doesn't understand why she's not coming across as feminine, right? And so she's hanging around, she's learning, she's trying, right? And yet, the men men already identify her as a masculine. They identify her as a masculine. And she's like, well, what does this mean? What does this masculine woman mean? You know. And nobody can really define those meanings, what masculinity is and what femininity is. However, it's something felt, right? It's not defined, but it's something that's felt. And once men, you know, get more and more polarized, you know, and women, you know, pull away from that masculinity, because, you know, masculinity involves a whole bunch of jousting, a bunch of competition, a bunch of, you know, deception, you know, violations, you know, a lot of that. You know, women, you know, especially as they start to get older. Once they start to get older, you know, women are like, You know, maybe when I was younger, I felt resilient, you know, that I could bounce back. But eventually women start to feel like, I ain't got that kind of bounce back no more. Right? And so, you know, they'll withdraw, right? They'll withdraw. And, you know, men typically, they will mimic the same thing that women do, but with different intentions. See, a lot of men think, you know, they're doing the same thing, you know, it's equal give and take and all of this, but the intentions are completely different. That's why intentions are everything, right? And then men will get to a point where they become so autonomized in the framework of being an automaton that, you know, they don't see or understand when people start talking about feelings. Okay? When they start talking about feelings, you know, they can only reference feelings in terms of, regret, pain, you know, real basic primitive type feelings. Okay? And then, you know, when they talk to women about feelings, you know, they don't recognize, you know, the barrier that they reach when it comes to feelings. And they're like, you know, enough, right? And women who have these feelings, they're like, no, you know, not enough. See, you've just reached the threshold, and you thought, okay, you know, you understand feelings now, but you're only at the threshold of feelings, right? And then they're like, no, you know, if I have to go and deal with, you know, trying to learn these feelings, you know, I will suffer tremendous regret, remorse, and possibly shame, right? And then the women are telling them, look, you know, you can get through it, and they're like, hell no. right? And then they revert back to drinking, drugging, sexing, and violence. Very few of them will, go fishing and try to contemplate that shit out, but, they're definitely, struggling with, coming to terms. They're still just ping-ponging those emotions back and forth. So, with that being said, this is how the dynamics of the family seem so contrary. Okay? Now, we've seen situations where men were patted on the ass, or men would joke around about, don't drop the soap, and a lot of us thought that was, just a prison term, right? We never thought about the locker rooms, in the gyms, or during their, their sports events, right? And the reason why is because, most women, even during PE, didn't shower out in the open. They accommodated women to have, at least some privacy stalls. Okay? And I was surprised, and I didn't realize that until, I think I was a janitor or something like that, and I was actually cleaning up, facilities made for men, and I was surprised. I was like, oh wow, the men's bathroom, they didn't have stalls. I was like, why don't they have stalls? And and I even asked, they were like, well, the only time men really need a stall is, when he needs the privacy, when he's shitting down and taking a shit. I was like, oh, okay. If you say so, right? If you say so. I can't even imagine, going, through even a small percentage of my life using the bathroom in front of other people. Even complete strangers. I felt my privacy was violated when, even a sexual partner was like, I want to see you go to the bathroom. It's just like, you want to see it? All right, you can see it this once. Hold on. Okay, I thought I was going to be able to get more than an unusual food, but not when a bag of apples, right, cost $16. Okay? So, I ended up going over my max, but I still got, what I needed. Like, I got some shrimp, I got some chicken wings, I bought some peanut butter, even though I don't really eat peanut butter. But you never know in these hot times. Got some more cheese. Got some garlic. I got some spam, bacon flavored. Yeah, it was on sale. Got me 3 Poppy soda pops. They were on sale for $1.99. Bought a bunch of chips. They were 5 for $5. So yeah, got 5 of them. So my total ended up being $124, and since I had the coupon for $20 off, it ended up being $104, the food that I got. Okay, so yeah.